Hi, I'm standing right in the original Grove Road dump. We're going to give the history of dumps and how we got to where we are today in the transfer stations. But first, let's hear the top 10 from what happened last month.
Okay, here we are this week or this month for the Rye Top 10. First of all, 3757 residents voted on November 8th. That seems to be a pretty high percentage to me. Good job, folks. The DPW will be moving to credit card payments for bulky items at the transfer station. So people will need to check in with the attendant. This is how it used to be, I'm told. I wasn't here back in those days. In addition, they're proposing an upgrade and a move of the town refueling gas station to near the salt shed, as the current pump can no longer be maintained. Really important note here is Planning Board is holding a public hearing on December 6th on changes to the Rye zoning ordinance. There's a lot of changes being proposed, in particular one that could have implications in what defines a wetland. So please try and attend. Note this public hearing will be your last opportunity to request changes to those zoning amendments. And we have a link so that you can see all the proposed amendments. As part of the Rye 400th celebration, Rye Heritage Commission has undertaken a project to create and install 7 historic markers to recognize Rye's history and culture. The appeal for funding for the historic signage property was immediately successful, with 6 of the 7 signs fully funded in the first week. Good news, the Rye Water District boil order has been lifted. There's a recorded video on video on a presentation, and also a resident has provided a letter about Rye itself adhering to the NHDES requirements. Lastly of mine, then I'll switch over to Steve. 181 variances have been granted by the zoning board year to date. Again, wetlands are the most common. 59 cases have been heard in 2022.
Okay, thank you. On November 14th, the New Hampshire DES gave an update on the Coakley landfill, and they were clear the PFOAs and other toxins that we find in our water do not come from Coakley. They come from the Breakfast Hill landfill and the Grove Road landfill, which we should call a dump, that we're standing on now. The New Hampshire DES in the summer notified the people that live around this area within 500 feet that if they have a private well, they should be testing it. The May testing reports actually are there, and we have a link to it. You got your tax bills recently. So how did we get at that mill rate? What the select board did, and you can see it in the November 9th meeting, is they said, all right, if we had a house that was worth $1 million with a new assessment, if their tax bill went up 3%, all right, what do we need to do to make the tax rate so that their bill would go up 3%? So what they ended up doing is taking almost $1 million from the unassigned fund balance and to pay the taxes down to get at that rate. Now last year they take $2 million out of that to keep the tax rate flat. Now the thing on the $11 million town budget, the unassigned balance went from about $2 million last year to $4 million. So $2 extra million came from somewhere that really wasn't discussed. So you can see all that information, the details. It's budget season for next year. The DPW, the Recreation, Fire and Safety are all looking to increase staff. There's links in that the Fire and Safety has a plan. Rye Rec is just trying to get back to 2000 pre-COVID staffing levels, but the DPW is looking for more people, an assistant, so a lot of headcount is on the table to be discussed. The capital improvement plan was accepted by the select board, and we have links to over the next from 2023 to 2028, 12 million in identified projects. That does not include another 16 million, and that's where the $11 million for the Rye Water Treatment Plant is going to be, and that impacts everyone that lives in the Rye Water District. Okay, stick around. We've got a special guest that's going to talk about history of dumps in Rye. All right, I am standing in the Grove Road, the old Grove Road dump. We're standing right above, you can see the transfer station right over there. We're on Grove Road. This is the road that goes to the original Grove Road landfill, and down that way, 1,100 feet in that direction, is the Garland Well. 63 feet below where the Grove Road landfill is. Travel the road, and as we're traveling the road, we could see the signs that said, "Don't go down that direction. It is the wellhead protection area for the Garland Road well." So after World War II, Rye leased this land and then bought it. It was an old gravel pit where people would come and just dump their dump. All right, in the 1960s, we were burning and incinerating. It's actually, we were walking around, we could see some ash come up, but that stopped in the 70s when the smoke and ash ruined the wedding of the local judge. So later in 1970s, Rye leased the land on Breakfast Hill Road, so the intersection of Route 1, Washington Road, and Breakfast Hill, and that lasted till 1978. During that same period, from 72 to 82, other towns were dumping that trash behind that spot, and that's the 27-acre Coakley landfill that's become the EPA Toxic Waste Superfund site. And around the 1971, the town residents started working together with other communities to transfer waste out, and residents also started lobbying for recycling. And so original recycling started here at the Grove Road dump. In 79, the Grove Road brush dump, which is today's transfer station, became the new public works site and the recycling center. In 80-81, money was voted, and that's where those highway buildings were, where the DPW keeps their vehicles. The original salt shed was there. In 1983, we decided to turn that into the complete solid waste transfer station. There was a zoning ordinance passed for solid waste collection. And then we worked with other towns to transport our waste up to Biddeford, Maine, and then that coalition now takes all that trash to the turnkey landfill up in Rochester. If you had children that went to Rye, like we did, they toured the Rochester dump, and if you haven't been up there, there's going to be additional sites. So just to recap real slightly, Rye has garbage stored up on Breakfast Hill. We have here on the Grove Road dump site, things are teaching, and this is where the PFOAs and other substances have been tested. Those are the monitoring pits, and we mentioned earlier the Garland well is downhill that way. All right, at the transfer station, all right, where we have the fueling, we fuel vehicles there, everything coming off our yards, everything we dump there, all sits up and runs down there towards the Garland well. Rye Water only runs off essentially 2 wells now. The Cedar well run, they typically only use when they have to because it's so high in manganese and iron. Speaking of the transfer station, don't forget to look at the video that's new, talks about the 20 different recycling stations we have at the transfer station.